Alright, so here we are with the second video dealing with categorical logic and testing validity. Specifically here we're going to learn a second technique other than the rules method. This one's a lot easier. It's called the coined word method. The coined word method was created in the 13th century by Peter of Spain. Peter of Spain recognized that there were four figures in four moods, which meant that you could make a combination of 64 different arguments from those moods and figures. So he constructed all 64 of those moods, arguments rather, tested them using the rules, and he found that 15 of them are valid and all the rest are invalid. Now, of course, in the Middle Ages, people relied a lot upon the idea of memorization. Paper was very expensive, hard to come by, and so you didn't really get the chance to write things down. You had to remember them. And it's a lot easier to remember something in the form of a poem. So what Peter of Spain does is he comes up with all of the words that you see on the board here, and he puts it into a nice little Latin poem for the students to memorize and recite back. Within that poem is everything they need to know whether an argument is valid or not. Now, today, of course, we have paper dirt cheap. We write things down all the time, and we don't usually spend a lot of time on memorization anymore. So it's easier for us just to have the little list that you see in front of you. Now, I have it written on the board here, which hopefully you're able to see. If not, you also have a categorical logic cheat sheet that is listed for you. Ask that. It's listed as categorical logic cheat sheet, and you'll find that in Blackboard. Just go ahead and make a reference to that, and you'll have the list presented to you. Now, you'll notice here that what we have are four different columns, each one representing one of the four figures. So first figure, second figure, third figure, and fourth figure. Below each figure, there's a list of names. So under first figure, you have Barbara, Kellerent, Darii, and Ferio. Under the second figure, you have Cesare, Chemestris, Festino, and Barocco. Under the third figure, you have Decimus, Datizzi, Boccardo, and Fresisson. And under the fourth figure, you have Chemenes, Dimaris, and that should be Ferrison. I'm sorry, I've got the same word presented up there twice. But in any event, the way that this works is that if you notice in each one of these words, there are exactly 3 vowels. None of the vowels are a U, which means that we have the A, the E, and the O being presented to us. Now, the order in which they appear in the word is your basic order of the syllogism: major premise, minor premise, conclusion. And so Barbara, you see the vowels here, we have A. And so if you have an A, figure 1 syllogism, you know that it's valid because it's on this list. And all you have to do is mark it valid via Barbara, and you're done. Kellerent, right, you've got E, A, E. So if you have an EAE under figure 1, then you know that's valid via Kellerent. And when you're using the coin word method, make sure that you always give the name that's associated with it, because that's your proof. Anybody that knows logic knows what those words stand for, and they know what those mean. And so basically you're saying, hey, Peter did all the work for me. I'm going to make it easy on myself by not having to work through all those rules, and just basically stating, all right, so here is my mood and figure, valid via whatever. Now do pay attention to which column it's under, okay? Just because AAA1 is valid doesn't mean AAA2 or 3 or 4 is. It's only by what's under its specific column for that particular figure. Also keep in mind that the order of the vowels in the words cannot be jumbled. So EAE figure 1 is valid, but AEE figure 1 would not be. But once you get a hang of that, it's an incredibly easy test to make, because it's simply a matter, if it's on the list, it's valid. If it isn't, it isn't. So you'll see an argument presented there. It says no A are B, some C are B, therefore some C are not A. Well, if we want to know, using the coin word method, whether that argument is valid or not, we just need to know what the mood and figure is. So no A or B, that's an E statement. Some C or B, that's an I statement. Some C are not A, that's an O statement. And the middle term is the B, used twice in the premises, not in the conclusion. It's in the predicate position for both, so that makes it a figure 2. So EIO figure 2. We're going to look under the second column here for a word that has EIO in it, in that order. And right there, festino, EIO. And so we simply say valid via festino. And just like that, you're done. Normally, you'll see it just written out mood and figure, because that's the easiest way to work with it. And so here we've got 5 here that we can play with. O figure 3. I'd look under column 3 to see if there's a word that has OAO in it. And right there, third one down, bocardo. And so we know this is valid. Valid via bocardo. The next one is EIO figure 4. So looking under figure 4, EIO, there it is, Farison. Third one, EAE figure 3. EAE, there is no word here under figure 3 that has EAE, so we know this one's invalid because it's not on the list. AII figure 2, nope, not on there, so we know that one's invalid. And EAE figure 1, if we go back over there, there it is, colorant EAE. So we know that one is valid via colorant. And that's all there is to it. Makes life so much easier. Now, the downside to the coin word list, the only downside, is that it's just a bottom line thing. It says it's valid or it's not valid, but if it's invalid, it doesn't explain why. So what I like to do, and what I have students do, is to use both of these in conjunction with each other. When you're presented with an argument or you're presented with a mood and figure, use the coin word list first to find out if it's valid or invalid. That's the easiest way to go about doing it. Takes a matter of seconds to check that list. If it's invalid, then go back and use the rules method to determine why the argument is invalid. And that's what I want you guys to do as well. And I'm going to give you some homework to play with regards to that. All right, so somewhere around page 292, depending upon which edition of the book you have, you should find exercise 5.3. And at 5.3, section 1, there's a list of 20 moods and figures. The first one is AAA figure 3. The second one, IAI figure 2. The third one, EIO figure 1. Okay, hopefully everybody's found it based upon that. So let's just take a look at the first one there, AAA figure 3. Well, based upon that, AAA figure 3, I want to know, is this valid or invalid? So the first thing I do is check the coin word list, third figure. there is no word with AAA in it under the third column. So I know that it's invalid. But I want to know why is it invalid. So I have to turn to the rules method to find out. Now, how you choose to do that is up to you. Normally what I like to do is to start with Rule 5 and work backwards. Because 5, 4, and 3, you don't need to see it written out, right? You can just look at the mood to tell. So Rule 5 said that if you have two universal premises, you cannot have a particular conclusion. Well, we have two universal premises, but we also have a universal conclusion, so Rule 5 is okay. Rule 4 says if you have a negative premise, you need a negative conclusion, and vice versa. But the premises and the conclusion, those are all affirmative, so we have no problem with Rule 4. Rule 3, it says that you cannot have two negative premises at the same time. Again, those are both affirmative, so we don't have a problem with that. So the problem must be with either Rule 1 or Rule 2 in this case, so we will need to see the argument written out. So just like we did with last week, you want to go ahead and construct this. So the first premise, your major premise, is A, all are. Minor premise, all are. In conclusion is an A statement, so all are. It's a figure 3, so your middle term is going to go in the subject position of both. And then, of course, I use A for the major, B for the minor, with the minor always being the subject of the conclusion, major always being the predicate of the conclusion. Now, we have the argument presented to us. Both rules 1 and 2 deal with distribution, so we need to mark distribution. These are all A statements. With an A statement, we distribute or circle the subject. So we'll mark the subject in each of those. Rule 2 says that anything that is circled in the conclusion has to also be circled in the premises. The B is circled in the conclusion. It's not circled in the premise. That's where our problem is. The B that's not circled is in the minor premise, so we know that it commits the fallacy of illicit minor. And that's basically the technique. That's the way it works. So what I would like you to do is just that at 5.3, and I'm going to have you do 2 through 20 even. And that'll give you a good bit of practice both with using the coined words as well as with using the rules method. So it'll allow you to work on both within one particular thing. All right, so that is what I'm going to set for you. Now there is a couple other sections that we need to look at in this. I'm going to do those on a separate video again. But this is the main thing, this is the most important thing that you want to take out of Chapter 5, is knowing how to use that coined word list and use the rules method. So when you go into 5.3, just ignore the instructions that are given to you in the book. Instead, take the mood and figure that you're given, and just like I showed you here, use the coined word first to find out if it's valid or invalid. If it's valid, just say valid via and whatever the word happens to be, you're done. If it's invalid, then go on to use the rules to explain why it's invalid. Okay? So I will see you in the third video.